welcome to the show. The first piece of information comes from A16. A16, if you're unaware, is Andreessen and Horowitz. They spun off and made an A16 Crypto, which is their division just for crypto. They made their fortune in the dot-com bubble. They were invested in Netscape, I believe, and then kept investing in tech. But this PDF just talks about crypto, just the market cycles, what's going on. The apparent chaos has an underlying order, so they try to make sense of all the data. The price, the interest in social media, the new ideas, the developer activity has all been in this constant uptrend. So regardless of just the price, the developer activity, the jobs, everything is moving up at the same time. So you can see even in this dip, even in dips in the past, things have been made that were, made a lot of money over time. So blockchain has multiple scaling promises, and you can see that they mentioned layer ones. Now, Aptos and Sui are two layer ones that don't really get talked about too often. And we know with the last bull run, there was kind of like this layer one run where just layer ones ran, and usually the newer layer ones did a lot better than the older ones. So that might be something that you want to research. They really get into Ethereum. The transition proof of stake is, costs a lot less than YouTube. There's a ton of value on Ethereum, blah, blah, blah. What's interesting to me is right at the trends that they're watching. So the regulatory trends that they're watching is the Ripple case. So let me just find it. The Ripple case is being watched. This is a trend to watch by A16. They've also talked about Tornado Cash and Celsius and, the White House's executive order. I believe Digital Commodity Exchange Act is the one that Brad Garlinghouse is telling people to back. That's a good one. But anyway, the Ripple case is being watched by all the major players in crypto. A16 certainly is a big deal in crypto. Now, you could see on this chart the US is losing its lead in Web3, and you see this decline that's happening. More developers are not working in the crypto industry because there's uncertainty. And there's less and less traffic happening, but the rest of the world, there's this upwards growing path while the US is declining. Now, this is Wifey on Twitter. So she found this document from the IMF, and it looks like they're switching the inflation rate from 2% to 3%. So 2% comes from the gold standard. That was as much gold as they pulled out of the ground. It was like at a 2% rate. So that's what they've modeled. Every economic model is around 2% inflation. It looks like they're going to switch it to 3%. So once their job gets difficult, they just change the rules. So, she says, trust the research. So they made a document to back their research, and this is part of the document. So the IMF is going to start putting this, but when we get to like 3% inflation, that's going to be good enough. Now, this is the Bank of International Settlements, and this is Project Rio. Listen to this.
End to end, Rio analyzes and visualizes markets in less than 2 seconds. Yet coping with the pace and volume of information Rio offers is not simple for the human eye. Central bankers are still just people. Rio helps them with an intuitive dashboard. The dashboard gives central banks the broad view they need to see what's happening, yet it also makes it easy to deep dive and understand why. Icons and colors highlight issues immediately. Consistency across currencies and metrics makes navigation.
This is real-time data going to central banks, and they're going to have monetary policy for the first time modeled off of real-time data. So part of the problem is they have a hammer, and anytime there's a problem, all the tools that they have is just a hammer, and they can only pound down, right? So they can they can fight inflation by raising interest rates and starting quantitative tightening, or they can lower interest rates and start quantitative easing when they're buying. So what Project Rio is doing is taking real-time data and bringing this right to the central banks where they're able to see everything in real time. They work off of lagging indicators today. So what happens if they have real-time data that they can actually see and be able to support their decisions in real-time data? Not to mention, you can get monetary policy that's surgical. So there's a certain sector that's in trouble, you could design monetary policy just for that sector. Now that's what we've been talking about with central bank digital currencies and kind of the end game there. But I don't think Project Rio even it needs a CBDC to be done. This is all can be done with APIs and just just plug into the banks and everything and just be able to monitor data. So pretty interesting stuff. We're moving into a different paradigm. This is going to change money. This is a cashless society. Money is going to change. Monetary policy is going to change. Physical policy is going to change. Everything's going to change. Now, Depression BTC tweets out, there's a lot of selling pressure coming. FTX liquidations are going to have to sell 7 billion in tokens. There's 900 Bitcoin per day per miners. 40,000 Bitcoin still need to be sold by the US government. And 30 billion staked ETH get unlocked. So ETH just had a Shapilla upgrade, and they're going to let loose like around 18 million staked ETH. So now those people that stake the ETH are able to sell it or buy it or do whatever they want with it. So Glassnodes estimates that only 170,000 ETH will immediately be there after the up. If you're not following the XX network on Twitter, it's XX_network. Now, as you know, I work with the XX network. I'm going to host a interview. So we're going to interview David Shum as well as Andrew Basmati. Andrew Basmati is a former CIA spy. I'm going to ask him the really hard questions. So some of you guys have been sending me DMs and telling me certain things. I'm gonna ask him the hard questions. So I hope everyone can join me. It's on April 18th at 4 p.m. UTC time. I really think everyone's going to enjoy this. I'm certainly really looking forward to this, and I hope I can see everyone there. We're going to just talk about who's Satoshi, the China-U.S. Cold War, CBDCs, privacy going off the grid, quantum computing, and much more. So be sure to check that out. And now this is Ed Dowd. So Ed Dowd is a former BlackRock guy. He was an analyst for BlackRock. He's calling for more of these banking collapses to continue. And what he says in this interview is that the banks, the government, the Fed, what they're doing is they're just patching holes. So the holes are popping and the government just comes by and patches it. But a new one's going to pop up. It's kind of like a whack-a-mole game. They're just going to keep happening and happening. And that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is it all happens at once. So he's calling for this. He's a former analyst. Now, keep patching it up. Now, he also talks about central bank digital currencies. And the IMF has written a white paper to buy us from the IMF, the Project Icebreaker video I did. If you listen to some of his podcasts, he talks about the big banks and the Fed, or the big banks and the central banks, are the ones that issue the tokens. So the models that they've designed for central bank digital currencies is the big banks and the central banks issue tokens together, and it's kind of like a check and balance between both of them. But that's the setup right now, is to get rid of all the smaller banks, make just large banks that government sponsored, and then they work with the central bank. So very eerie setup. And at the same time, this is M2. So M2 is your cash. It's the money in your bank account, your checking account, the money on PayPal, all the money that moves around freely in the economy. And you can see we're getting into this negative area. So the last times this was negative was like in 1930, 1929, 1921 rather, 1893, 1876. All bad times in the economy. We've gone straight up and straight down now. So this is very unusual, and this surrounds bad things happening, depression, stuff like that. So the bankrupt crypto exchange FTX has recovered $7.3 billion in assets. So the way this works is once FTX went under, everybody's assets gets locked. Now they have $7.3 billion in assets they're going to sell for dollars and pay back everybody. But everyone's going to take a haircut after lawyers are paid, after all the legal fees are paid. Everybody takes a haircut and gets paid back whatever's left over. So if you had a Bitcoin on FTX, you might get 0.6 Bitcoin back, right? And, it's just spread out evenly. Now, CPI came out today and it was 5%. So we're lowering inflation. It's the lowest it's been since May 2021. Hong Kong is going to embrace crypto. So you're seeing this trend of Hong Kong embracing crypto while the US is shunning crypto. And I'm seeing more and more news coming out of Hong Kong that they're going to be a crypto hub. Now, Hong Kong is a financial hub. It's one of the largest financial hubs. And, if more innovation leaves the United States and goes to Hong Kong, so be it, right? But I do think the U.S. has a chance to kind of catch up. Now, this is Lael Brainard. Lael Brainard works for the Fed. I think she just resigned and went to the National Economists Association. It's like right underneath the Washington, and they're like Washington's economists. So it's like a kind of like a central bank, but for economists. Now, Brainard was also talking about a lot of these banks are going to fail. So it's very unusual to hear like former Fed people just, speculate that there's going to be more banking failures. But in this interview, that's pretty much what she says. So it's going to be more banking failures. And that's what Dowd's saying, is that there's going to be more. So the question is, how are they handled? Are they just patched over? And do we get through this as a soft landing? We just keep chugging along, or does everything hit the fan at one point? So this is John Deaton at Real Vision. Listen to what he has to say.
This is the quandary that people have, right? Proof of work, decentralized, proof of stake. It's not even Ripple. Interesting, when Ripple was sued, Brad Garlinghouse was making it a point to
Brad Garlinghouse, one of the founders, of course, of Ripple.
Right, he's the CEO of Ripple, and he made it a point to say, listen, the XRP ledger is a consensus protocol. It's not based on proof of staking.
All right, so with this upgrade, so Ethereum, right? A16 is talking about everyone's valuing Ethereum, but guess what? When they did the proof of work to proof of stake, they might have opened up a huge regulatory hole in their design. The way that Ethereum works is that you need kind of like this investment contract where you stake your assets. The way they designed it was not the smartest way to design it with U.S. regulations and the SEC. And this is Bank of America saying Bitcoin could have some room to grow. And they talk about all the Bitcoin that's being left from the exchanges and put into wallets. And they're seeing that as a really bullish thing. Now, big money isn't necessarily smart money. I really don't think that's what the case is. What's happened right now is NASDAQ, as well as some of the other ETFs, are bullish, right? So from the beginning of the year, you printed this double bottom and went on this uptrend. So if we put Bitcoin here, you're doing the same exact thing. You printed this double bottom, you started this uptrend. So the question is, where does the traditional economy stop? So you see, I have this trend line here. Does it break through here? Do we get up to this area of resistance, this area of resistance, this area of resistance? Like, how does this just keep going, right? So on the grand scheme of things, we've dropped. And, every other time in history, it's been a buy the dip and you go on to all-time highs. Is this one of those times? We don't know, but we will find out. Now, the next piece of information, again, Fidelity Digital Assets. So what I was talking about Ethereum, again, everybody's talking about Ethereum, but nobody's talking about the regulatory risk. So that's why everybody's watching Ripple right now. But the SEC could still go after Ethereum because of their proof of stake consensus. Now, somebody in the last video asked me about my Casper wallet right here. I do own Casper. I like Casper, but that doesn't mean that you should buy it just because I like it. I really like the fact that there's almost 11 billion tokens circulating, and the total supply is like 11.6. So I really like those tokenomics. The market cap's 460 million. You can see, well, the chart's not up, but you can see that it started off really high and it pretty much rugged and stayed sideways since its inception. It's had the lousy luck of being launched when the bull market was ending and the bear market was beginning. They have a lot of partnerships. They're tied with the World Economic Forum. There's a cult community being developed. So I really like what Casper's doing. I really like what's happening with them. You can see here, though, the max supply is infinite. So that's one of my criticisms with them is, they allow everyone to get 10% APR. So this part, there's always going to be more tokens coming. So it's got like 10% inflation. But I think, even with that said, it's going to be a successful network. But, I don't know anything for certain. This is just my speculation and how I'm positioning myself for the next bull run. So I hope everyone enjoyed this video. Please take a moment to like and subscribe. If you enjoy content like this, please consider joining my Patreon. Remember to hit the bell.